I had loved Najib humbly for 5 years, enduring his boredom and cold violence. When he threatened me with breaking up for the 100th time, I quietly packed my things and left. He chased after me and asked me why. I told him breaking up, but he thought I was just throwing a tantrum. I smiled sarcastically. In 5 years, he had said breaking up to me 100 times, while I only said it once, just this once. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened by the sudden sound of the door opening. Instinctively, I blocked the somewhat dazzling light with my hand. Perhaps because he suddenly saw me on the sofa, Najib seemed to be stunned for a moment. "It's late night. Why aren't you sleeping and staying in the living room?" There was a strong smell of alcohol on him, along with a faint scent of orange blossom perfume, mixed with the smell of cigarettes. I asked him why he was so late and why he didn't answer the phone. "Have you eaten?" On the dining table, there were the meals I had prepared, 6 dishes and a soup. There was originally a small cake too, but since he didn't come back, I threw it into the trash can. "Shall I heat up the meals for you?" Najib pushed me and asked me, "Are you annoying? Who would eat at this time?" Not answering the phone definitely means there's something going on. I nodded and was about to put the meals into the refrigerator. "Wendy, let's break up," Najib suddenly said as he was going upstairs. My hands that were tidying up the dishes paused. I had been with him for 5 years. During these 5 years, he had told me breaking up 99 times in total, and this was the 100th time. And the reason for this time was just that I waited for him when he didn't come home at midnight? Or was it because his first love had come back? I knew that Lily had returned to China today. He went to pick her up at the airport and then they had dinner, drank alcohol, and went singing together. It seemed that he had completely forgotten that he had promised me yesterday that he would come home for dinner today to celebrate my birthday. I raised my head, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth, and nodded and said, "Okay." It seemed that he didn't hear this word and just went upstairs on his own. If it had been before, I would have followed him, prepared the bath water for him and boiled a pot of health-preserving tea. After waiting for him to go upstairs, I would start packing the few things that belonged to me left. Maybe he had drunk too much or simply didn't care. This afternoon, I had already sorted out some of the things that originally belonged to me and had them taken away by a car. And during these 5 years, I also sorted out all the gifts he had bought for me and put them aside separately. In fact, in these 5 years, he had always kept me outside his own world. The two of us were clearly separated, and it seemed that neither of us could integrate into the other's life. Originally, I had planned to tell him breaking up tonight. After all, he had said it 99 times and the last time should have been said by me. However, before I could open my mouth, he said it first. After I packed my things and was changing shoes at the entrance, I looked up at the time. It was past 4 o'clock in the morning. 5 years ago, at this same time, Najib called me and said to me, "Wendy, since you like me so much, let's be together." At that moment, I was overjoyed, feeling that God had finally shown favor to my infatuation. I had liked Najib since high school. After thinking about it and hesitating for a long time, I finally handed him a love letter. He didn't read it. Instead, he tore it up and threw it in my face, calling me sick and a country bumpkin. When I went to college and saw that he was still single, I knitted a scarf for him by myself. This time, he didn't reject me. He accepted the scarf and then we added each other as friends. The on and off relationship was maintained like this, not really like a romantic relationship. However, I was very happy, and my eyes were always searching for him in the crowd. But whenever I saw him, I would be so shy that I quickly looked away and my heart would beat wildly like a deer. This relationship lasted for a while until I found that my scarf was worn by Lily. I sent him a message to ask, and then I learned that Lily was his childhood sweetheart and girlfriend. Since he had a girlfriend, I naturally wouldn't pester him anymore. From then on, he and I were like strangers. Until 5 years ago, at past 4 o'clock in the morning, he was drunk and called me. Later, I learned that Lily had fallen in love with a rich young master and chased after him abroad. After Najib sent her to the plane, he went to the bar to get drunk. At past 4 o'clock in the morning, it was really hard to get a taxi. I waited in the morning breeze for more than half an hour before I finally got one. Back in my own small apartment, I lay on the bed and slept soundly. When I woke up, the early winter sun with its golden luster shone on the bay window. I got up to wash and dress. When I opened the wardrobe, I felt a bit lost. Most of the clothes in the wardrobe were in black and gray tones, with a stale and old-fashioned look. In these 5 years of loving him, I seemed to have lost myself. In fact, I liked bright colors. However, Najib didn't like them, or rather, Lily didn't like them. I remembered Lily said that black could embrace all colors. But didn't she know that black was a mixture of many colors? I opened the suitcase, took out a wine-red knitted long dress and put it on. Then I put on a light makeup in front of the mirror. Even though I had slept for half a day and seemed to be energetic, the dark circles under my eyes reminded me that I hadn't slept at all last night. When I picked up my mobile phone, almost instinctively, I checked Najib. There wasn't a single word in the chat box. It seemed that my leaving in the early morning hadn't caught his attention at all. I took a selfie and posted it on Moments, breaking up, back to being single. Soon, my Moments exploded. Many people asked me why. In the group of Najib's friends next door, all his buddies at me. Sister-in-law, you really broke up with Najib. At most in 3 days, sister-in-law will come to Najib to beg for getting back together. Haha. Many people laughed along. There were also people betting on how many days Najib and I would be separated. Then this topic was brought up, and they discussed it heatedly. Some said 3 days, and some said 5 days. There were also people laughing at me, saying that it would be at most a few hours. I smiled and whispered softly to myself, forever. Just when they were discussing vigorously, Najib sent a message, without any warmth in the words, if you have the guts to leave, don't come back. If it had been before, when I saw this message from him, I would have been very frightened and felt uneasy. Then I would carefully explain and under his condescending gaze, crawl back like a bootlicker, begging for mercy. But this time, I didn't feel anything at all. Yes, I didn't love him anymore. I don't know where love started or ended, probably I loved him too much and was too tired. Looking back on these 5 years, it was like a dream. On the weekend, my best friend invited me to take photos in Hanfu. She said that the ginkgo leaves had all turned yellow, shining golden, and it was the most suitable for taking pictures. I'm a professional writer. I've published several books, and the electronic versions have also achieved good results. Usually, I'm a homebody and always worried about Najib. Only then did I suddenly realize that in these 5 years, I seemed to have missed my entire youth. Because no matter where I was or what I was doing, I was always thinking about him, fearing to miss his messages, his phone calls and every little thing about him. In the afternoon, Najib suddenly called me. I didn't answer the first call. The phone kept ringing, and my best friend told me to answer it. I took a look and saw that it was still him. Ignoring my best friend's teasing, I answered the call. Wendy, I've made an appointment with friends to drink. Come to pick me up tonight and drive the car back by the way. On the phone, Najib's tone still carried that condescending air. It wasn't asking for my opinion but giving an order. I smiled and said, Najib, we've broken up. Please call a designated driver yourself. Then I hung up the phone. My best friend gave me a thumbs up and smiled and asked, Wendy, are you serious this time? Yes, loving him was too tiring. I nodded and took out my makeup bag to touch up my makeup. The phone rang again, and I directly muted it. My best friend said since I didn't love him anymore, why not block him? She also said that a qualified ex-boyfriend should be like a dead person. I smiled and shook my head and said, it's not time yet. My best friend pulled my ear and jokingly scolded me like in ancient costume TV dramas, you little minx, don't be so cheap. She even said that if I dared to get back together with Najib, she would break off our friendship. This man has always treated you as a backup option. My best friend angrily scolded. She said that she would introduce a boyfriend to me. I smiled and joked with her, saying that she was still single herself but still wanted to introduce a boyfriend to me. I had a great time in the afternoon. I took a lot of photos in various scenes. When it was getting dark and I was changing clothes, I took a look at my phone. The phone was being bombarded with calls. It wasn't Najib but my editor. I was stunned for a moment, and then the editor called again. I answered the call in a flurry. The editor yelled at me, asking what I was doing and why I didn't answer the phone. He said that the book I wrote had caught the eye of a film and television company. We could talk about the copyright fee, and if there was no problem, we could sign the contract directly. Was there such a good thing? I was overjoyed at once. Could it be that my luck had improved after breaking up with Najib? I excitedly pulled my best friend to go drinking to celebrate. However, I never dreamed that I would run into Najib in the bar. He and Lily were hugging each other. Lily was wearing a black dress, and a glint of gold on her chest caught my attention. The rising dragon Tuanpei? Bringing fire and moving stars, the rising dragon emerges from the Dinghu Lake. This was the birthday gift I gave Najib last year. He said at that time that he liked it very much and would surely keep it carefully. Unexpectedly, it was kept on Lily's neck. Probably because she noticed that my expression was different. My best friend followed my gaze and then spat angrily and cursed, "What bad luck. Let's change to another bar." I shook my head and said, "Do I have to avoid or evade just because they are there?" My best friend nodded repeatedly and pulled me to sit down. We saw Najib and them, and of course, they also saw us. It seemed that Lily said something to him, and Najib stood up and walked towards me. "Wendy, why are you in the bar?" Najib asked me directly. Before I could say anything, my best friend jumped up and asked him what he meant. Since he could come, why couldn't we? "Wendy, I don't want to see you now. Go back immediately." Najib's tone was very harsh, ordering me condescendingly. I raised my head and smiled at him and said, "Najib, if you don't want to see me, you can leave. Don't interfere with my drinking." Ironically, Najib even said to me that I shouldn't use such cheap means to attract his attention. Suddenly, I felt so sad. In these 5 years, how humble had I loved him. To make him have such a sense of superiority, he thought that I had deliberately followed him here and used this means to attract his attention. I also understood that Lily felt uncomfortable seeing me. After all, the overlap rate of our social circles with Najib was quite high. As everyone knew, Najib and I were a couple. Now that she intervened, she was the third party. Suddenly, I also came to my senses. That night, Najib wanted to break up with me just because he was worried that Lily would be the subject of gossip. So was he using the breakup as a pretext? On the one hand he proposed to break up with me, while on the other hand he was enjoying the love where I was fawning over him. Najib, a qualified ex-boyfriend, should be like a dead person. Please don't bother me while I'm drinking. After figuring it out, I wasn't too sad. Or rather, in these 5 years, he had made me sad so many times that I was already numb by now. My best friend was really a great help. She said that she was about to introduce her cousin to me and asked Najib not to harass me anymore. I noticed that there was unconcealable anger in Najib's eyes and he was on the verge of a violent rage. "Wendy, I'll say it again. Leave immediately, or I'll never see you again." Najib said these words coldly, squeezing them out through his clenched teeth. These words seemed a bit familiar? Yes. When I had just started dating him, he asked me to sort out my old clothes that I didn't need and donate them. There was a tie that was torn, so I donated it along with the old clothes. After he found out, he flew into a rage and asked me to get the tie back no matter what. At that time, he told me that if I couldn't get the tie back, he would never see me again. I was just like a kid who had done something wrong at that time, feeling very uneasy. I tried various ways to retrieve that batch of donated clothes. Since more than 10 days had passed, the tie couldn't be retrieved in the end. I kept ingratiating myself with him every day, carefully admitting my mistakes and making apologies, and enduring his coldness. During that period, I became very sensitive and had a very light sleep. I would wake up at the slightest noise and often had unexplained heart palpitations. I carefully considered every word he said every day, watched his expressions, and analyzed his emotions. I didn't know if this could be considered domestic cold violence. But I knew that in half a month, I had lost about 10 pounds all of a sudden. I had panda eyes every day. Finally, I couldn't hold on any longer and had to stay in the hospital for a week before I recovered. When I was in the hospital, he hugged me and told me that he was wrong and that he shouldn't have treated me like that. That tie was given to him by Lily and he just wanted to keep it as a souvenir. He also promised that he would never make the same mistake again in the future. Ironically, today, to show his love for Lily, he said this to me again. And in my heart, there was no ripple. No joy, no sorrow. Love, it's the accumulated dedication of feelings, not something that makes a person so humble and lowly. I think I was wrong in this relationship. Najib, I'll say it again too. We've already broken up. I smiled, picked up the wine that my best friend handed to me, raised my glass towards him, and then said, I've already packed up all the gifts you gave me and put them in your room, and left you a message. Please also take some time to sort out the gifts I gave you and return them to me. Speaking of this, I deliberately glanced at the rising dragon pendant hanging around Lily's neck. A shadow flashed across Najib's handsome face. Wendy, don't regret it. I smiled casually. Sure enough, once I let go, he was just an ordinary person. All his words seemed unable to make my heart flutter for him anymore. Calmly watching him turn around and walk to Lily's side, I didn't pay any more attention and just drank and chatted with my best friend. My best friend asked me that since I had sold the film and television copyright and was going to make a drama, did I have an ideal candidate for the male lead? I smiled and shook my head. I was just a poor writer. How could I have the right to randomly choose the male lead? Before we knew it, both of us had drunk a bit too much. My best friend called her distant cousin and asked him to come and pick us up. Don't bother your cousin. We can walk back. It's not far, I said with a smile. My best friend didn't agree. She was still joking on the phone, asking her cousin to bring flowers and saying that she was going to introduce me to him. I didn't take it seriously either. However, when my best friend's distant cousin walked towards us with roses in his hands, I was shocked. Forrester? I knew him. Oh, no, I didn't know him. I had just seen his photo before, in Lily's WeChat moments. For him, Lily gave up her studies and chased after him abroad. My best friend went up to greet him and then introduced us to each other. I have to say that Forrester had an elegant and noble appearance and was polite to both my best friend and me. After handing me the flowers, he smiled and said to me, Meng Meng has been praising you nonstop. I thought she was exaggerating, but I didn't expect that you are even more beautiful in person. I had drunk a few glasses of wine and was a bit confused, so I smiled and said that I would take it as a compliment. When we left the bar, I deliberately looked back and found that Lily's face on the next booth was particularly ugly. The next day, I rubbed my groggy head and called my best friend, asking the doubt in my heart, how do you know Forrester? As a result, she told me that Forrester was really her cousin, but they hadn't met before. Half a year ago, Forrester returned from abroad and invested in a project with them, and that's how they got to know each other. She and I had always shared everything with each other, so I naturally told her about Lily's liking for Forrester. In fact, because of this, Lily didn't even finish her last year in college and directly chased after him abroad. According to the gossip my best friend gave me, Forrester and Lily didn't have very deep feelings. After Lily chased him abroad, she pestered him for more than a year before he agreed to date her. Half a year ago, when he returned to China, he broke up with Lily. I couldn't help sighing when I heard this and didn't know what to say. Wendy, does it make you feel relieved? My best friend said proudly. I deliberately asked him to come and pick us up yesterday just to make Lily look bad. I told my best friend not to do this again in the future, as it was not good for me or her cousin Forrester. Why? My best friend asked me loudly. Are you still thinking about Najib? I sighed softly. It had nothing to do with Najib. Recently, I was only planning to focus on writing and didn't want to fall in love again. I wouldn't flirt with Forrester just because Lily had liked him before, out of some kind of revenge mentality. When it came to love, I had always been true to my heart. In the evening, I received a call from Najib. What's up? I'm at your door. Open it. Najib's tone was as commanding as always. I frowned slightly and thought about it. Well, it would be better to talk face to face and make things clear. After opening the door, I took out shoe covers from the shoe cabinet for him. However, he was so familiar with the place that he opened the shoe cabinet himself, took out the slippers and put them on. Those slippers were bought by me and were originally prepared for him. All right, if he wanted to wear them, let him. I would just throw them away later, just like throwing away the past. Wendy, what are you making a fuss about? Najib said to me that he and Lily were just friends and now that she was back, he was just keeping her company. He also said that he knew my best friend was quite wild and that she deliberately invited Forrester over yesterday just to make Lily embarrassed. Wendy, when did you become so narrow-minded? Najib was aggressive. On the surface, he seemed to be coaxing me and explaining to me, but his tone and his actual actions were clearly to condemn me. Yesterday, I saw with my own eyes that he and Lily were hugging and kissing passionately. Now, he actually told me in a casual tone that they were just friends and he was just keeping her company. I couldn't help asking him, do you also need to sleep with her? Wendy, how did you become so caustic? Najib said. I smiled and walked inside, poured myself a glass of orange juice, took a sip, and then said, Najib, whether I'm caustic or not doesn't matter. After all, we've already broken up. My words and deeds had nothing to do with him. Najib stared at me coldly and asked me, because of Forrester? What does it have to do with him? Then what's the point of you insisting on breaking up with me? Najib's voice was obviously much louder. I just looked at him. Did he know what he was talking about? In 5 years, he had mentioned breaking up with me 100 times. Now, he said that I was insisting on breaking up? Could it be that I was the one who was wrong? Najib, it was you who told me to break up. I said. Do you know how many times you've said break up to me in these 5 years? In your mind, is break up just 2 words? Just something to say casually? Or, am I just a talking toy to you? When you need me, you pick me up, and when you don't, you just throw me away. Najib tugged at his hair. I knew that he was very irritable now, or even a bit furious. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done this action. He took out a cigarette, didn't ask for my opinion, and just lit it on his own. Then he said to me, Wendy, I'm wrong. I shouldn't have casually mentioned breaking up with you. I apologize. But your behavior yesterday was too much. I've reserved a table. Let's have dinner together today and you can apologize to Lily. Only now did I finally understand that the purpose of his coming today was to hope that I would apologize to Lily. For the sake of his first love, he didn't hesitate to humble himself and come to apologize to me. How ironic, I started to reflect on myself again. In these 5 years, how humble had I been in loving him? To make him so confident and narcissistic that he thought that as long as he casually said apologize to me, I would obediently crawl back to him like a dog? And humbly apologize to his first love? Najib, I don't accept your apology, and I won't apologize to Lily either. After all, I'm not wrong. I said that. He grabbed me and asked, are you done yet? Wendy, my tolerance for you is limited. He said. There was the usual impatience in his tone. I shook my head. He actually thought that I was throwing a tantrum to attract his attention. I had known that Lily was going to return to China half a month ago. That night, he seemed a bit absent-minded. Looking at his mobile phone, he smiled so tenderly. I had never seen him smile at me so tenderly before. Moreover, he was very guarded against me. Whenever I got close to him, he would look impatient. While he was taking a shower, I decided to check his mobile phone. The first time, face recognition failed to unlock the phone. I thought it was just that the phone didn't scan properly. The second time, the third time. Then the phone showed that a password was required to activate face unlocking. I entered the password, but it was wrong. At that moment, my hands and feet turned cold. I knew that he had removed me from his phone and changed the password. Originally the password of his phone was my birthday, but now. The second time I tried using Lily's birthday. Sure enough, the phone was unlocked. In the friend list, the top position that originally belonged to me was replaced by Lily. I didn't click on his chat dialogues with friends to read their chat content because it didn't matter anymore. I exited the phone and put everything back as it was. A day later I saw Lily post on Moments that she was ready to come back with a picture attached. The tired bird returns to its nest. The word nest was deliberately put in double quotes. Najib left a comment below her post, "Come back. No matter how far you fly, when you're tired, this is always your home." Even he didn't block me. Starting from that day, I sorted out the bits and pieces of the 5 years we had been together. Then sadly I found that in fact we were like two parallel lines. We seemed close but actually we never intersected. I didn't know whether Lily did it on purpose or not. Anyway, the day she returned to China was my birthday. I had told Najib a day in advance that I hoped he would come home for dinner and celebrate my birthday with me. I said that we had been together for 5 years and he had never celebrated my birthday. This time I hoped he could accompany me. He agreed. Even it was like a promise. He vowed that he would surely come back. In the morning when he left, he even kissed my face. But he didn't come back in the evening. He sent me a message saying that something came up and he wouldn't be back. Although in the past 5 years I had long been used to him treating his promises to me like air, I was still very sad that night. I reheated the dishes 5 times. I waited until they were completely cold but he still didn't come back. What he didn't know was that I flipped through my diary and counted several times. I wiped away my tears and said to myself, Najib has said break up to you 99 times. This time, it's your turn. However, before I could say it, he proposed to break up with me again. 100 times, a full 100 times. Now he actually thought that I was just throwing a tantrum. I shook off his hand, smiled faintly, and said, Najib, I'm not throwing a tantrum at you. You've said break up to me 100 times. Now, I'll say it to you once, just this once. We're breaking up. Please don't bother me. Go after Lily well. At the end I added. Najib had finished smoking his cigarette. He looked around but couldn't find an ashtray, so he just pressed it out in the kitchen sink. Wendy, you should know that if you're with Forrester, you'll be the third party interfering in other people's relationship. Najib said. I had never thought that I would be with Forrester. After all, we had only met once. But when Najib said this, I suddenly got angry. I originally thought that I could already face all his words calmly. This time I couldn't hold back and sneered, let's not talk about my business with Forrester. What about you and Lily? 5 years ago, while you were chasing Lily, you accepted my confession at the same time and treated me as a backup. After I found out, you confessed that you had a childhood sweetheart as your girlfriend. As soon as Lily left, you couldn't wait to come to me. You didn't even delay for a day. You sought comfort in my love harbor, in my humble love for you, and licked your wounds. Now, for Lily's sake, you're standing on the moral high ground and accusing me? Najib stared at me blankly, as if looking at a complete stranger. His phone rang. From my angle I could see clearly that it was Lily calling. He hung up Lily's call and asked me, Wendy, this time you proposed the breakup. In the future, don't come begging me. With that, he opened the door and was about to walk out. Najib, remember to sort out my things and return them to me. I said. He gave me a cold look and slammed the door and left. Whether Najib was angry or Lily was angry had nothing to do with me. During the following period of time, I lived a very fulfilling life. I wrote articles, watched TV shows, went shopping with my best friend. I no longer had to pay attention to Najib's messages all the time. I don't know why, but I felt so much lighter. Before, I always felt like there was a big stone weighing on my heart. I told my best friend about this feeling. She thought for a while and then said, people say that love is a sweet burden. Looking at how you were before, it was exactly like that. But a burden should be shared by both sides, not shouldered by just one person while the other only enjoys. My best friend also said that Najib's missing out on me would be a lifelong regret for him. Probably because of mentioning this topic, I went to check Najib's Moments. It was full of lovey-dovey posts, showing off his affection with Lily from all angles without any dead angles. But I don't know why. I always felt that something was strange, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. If it were before, I would naturally try to figure out Najib's thoughts. Now, I just let it go after seeing it. In the evening, not long after I separated from my best friend and before I even had time to take a shower and change clothes, Forrester called. "Forrester, what's up?" I answered the phone and asked. As a result, Forrester complained about my best friend on the phone, saying that she had dragged me around for a whole day and didn't handle the important business. What important business? I was confused. My best friend hadn't told me there was any serious business. She just took me shopping for clothes and then we ate, drank and had fun. As a result, Forrester told me that the real estate they had invested in with my best friend and several other friends was about to open for sale and they planned to invite me to be the spokesperson for publicity. I was confused. I'm not a star. I don't have fans or influence. Forrester said that it was popular nowadays to invite well-known writers to be spokespersons. Their real estate was a school district property, and the main advertisement slogan was "A Family of Scholars." Do you think I'm okay for it? I was a bit timid. Of course. Forrester asked me when I was free. He would invite me and Meng Meng, my best friend, to have dinner and talk about the endorsement fee and finalize the contract. I naturally had no objections and made an appointment to talk about the details at a specific time. I had just hung up Forrester's phone when Najib's call came in. I was a bit surprised. At a time when he and Lily were so affectionate, what did he want by calling me? Oh, right. I had asked him to return the things I gave him. Maybe he was calling to return them? "Wendy, why didn't you reply to my message?" Najib's voice carried a bit of reproach. I immediately wanted to hang up his call. I hadn't blocked him, but I had blocked his messages. "Wendy, I've thought it through." Najib said to himself on the phone, "I love you. I just regarded Lily as my sister. You know we grew up together since childhood. For so many years I just couldn't tell the difference between love and family affection. Stop joking. I'm driving to pick you up. I'll be downstairs at your place in 10 minutes. Get ready and come downstairs." It was as bossy as always. I smiled, a very sarcastic smile. "Najib, turn around and go back now. Don't come. I'm going to rest." I said directly, "Whether you regard Lily as your sister or your lover, it has nothing to do with me. We've already broken up." With that, I hung up the phone. When I finished taking a shower and changing clothes and came out, the doorbell kept ringing and my phone was also making a lot of noise. Was it still Najib? I answered the phone and said, "Najib, what on earth do you want? Didn't I make it clear enough? We've broken up." "Broken up? Can you just stop bothering me?" This time, there was impatience in my tone too. To avoid him calling me again, I blocked him. The next morning, when I was about to go out to throw away the garbage, as soon as I opened the door, I saw Najib leaning against the wall by my door, his eyes red, his hair messy, and there were dozens of cigarette butts on the ground. Najib saw me and grabbed my arm tightly, shouting, "Wendy, I've been waiting for you all night." I nodded. I could tell from his appearance. "Wendy, let's stop messing around. Come back with me," Najib said to me. I shook my head and said softly, "In the past 5 years, I've waited for you on countless nights. When you were drinking with your friends, when you were in a bad mood, when you secretly flew abroad to meet Lily. When you were drinking, you thought I was annoying when I called and blocked me. When I waited for you to come back, you explained to me that your phone was out of power. The longest time, you blocked me for a whole week. I asked you, and you said to me, 'Wendy, I just forgot to unblock you.'" I smiled sarcastically and said, "How casually you said it. I regarded you as my family, but you thought I was annoying and just blocked me directly." Najib hugged me tightly and tried to kiss my face, but I pushed him away. He smelled of alcohol, cigarettes, and also the perfume that belonged to Lily. I hadn't eaten breakfast in the morning, but I felt a bit nauseous. I turned around and went inside, picked up a broom and a dustpan, swept up the cigarette butts on the ground, poured them into the garbage bag, and then tied the garbage bag tightly. "Najib, loving you is too tiring. I don't love you anymore. I looked up at him and said, "Don't look for me in the future, and don't wait for me all night either. I won't be touched." I watched him step back in a mess. His back was against the wall, his hands clenched into fists. He said that he had just made the mistakes that all men would make. Why couldn't I forgive him? I told him that in the past 5 years, I had forgiven him countless times. And I didn't want to waste my whole life on forgiving him. With that, I closed the door and went downstairs to throw away the garbage. After that, I didn't see Najib for a long time. I knew that he had always been proud and haughty. Since we had already made things so clear, of course he wouldn't come to me again. I endorsed the real estate advertisement of Forrester and my best friend's side and cooperated with them to take photos for publicity. Gradually, I also got to know Forrester better. My best friend secretly asked me if there was any possibility between Forrester and me. I once read a sentence in a book, "Deep love doesn't last long, and excessive strength leads to humiliation." I said softly, "When it comes to feelings, let nature take its course." 2 months later, Lily suddenly called me and asked if I was free to meet. We made an appointment to meet at a coffee shop. Lily looked a bit haggard and no longer had her original high spirits and radiance. I ordered 2 cups of coffee. She slowly stirred the coffee with a spoon. After a long while, she finally said to me that she was planning to leave. "Where are you going?" I asked symbolically. "Back to my hometown." Lily said that for the sake of love, she had followed Forrester abroad and delayed her studies. She and Forrester had nothing in common. He despised her for being uneducated, vulgar, and just good-looking on the outside. When they broke up, he didn't have any lingering feelings. In the current popular saying, I came back to find him to take responsibility. "I know that you are by his side," Lily said to me. I nodded with a smile, as if I were listening to irrelevant gossip. She said that she deliberately chose to arrive at the airport on my birthday and deliberately asked Najib to pick her up. Everything was just as she had expected. Najib was deeply in love with her and obeyed her every word, and I broke up with Najib that very night. A tired bird returns to its nest, but I found your shadow everywhere in his nest, Lily said. You are like a brand engraved into his genes and can never be erased. I lowered my head and drank my coffee, not responding to her words. She said that she had passed the test for English majors, Band 8, and was planning to go back to her hometown to teach. "In my free time, I can also read more books," Lily said. She took out a set of my published books from her bag, put them in front of me, and said, "Could you please sign them for me as a souvenir?" I didn't reject her request. After Lily left, I never paid attention to Najib again. At the end of the year, Najib's good buddies called me one after another. Najib had come to look for me several times. However, love is such a magical thing. I seemed to have no feelings for him at all. It was as if my love for him was originally 100 points. After being worn down time and time again and after 100 breakups, those 100 points had been completely worn away, leaving only 0 points. So, I was indifferent to everything about him. Later, his good buddy told me that he had been in a car accident and hoped that I would go to see him. I inquired about it and then found out that after completely breaking up with me, he lived a dissipated life, drinking in bars every day. Not long ago, he made a major mistake at work and was fired by the company. Feeling depressed, Najib went to the bar to drink again. After getting drunk, he drove back and had a car accident. The car overturned and pinned him underneath. His legs were disabled and had to be amputated at a high level. He managed to survive, though. When I saw Najib in the hospital again, he had lost a lot of weight and seemed to have changed completely. He was no longer the sunny and handsome man he used to be. I didn't know what to say. I silently put down the fruit and was about to leave. "Wendy?" He opened his eyes and stared at me blankly. "Are you really so heartless?" he suddenly asked me. I suddenly smiled and said, "Heartless?" When I was with him before, I knew that he liked drinking and was addicted to it, and he also had the bad habit of driving after drinking. For fear that something might happen to him, I learned to drive. Whenever he went out drinking, I would take my laptop and find a corner outside to sit, writing while waiting for him. When he saw me after drinking, he always had an impatient look on his face. Every time, he complained that I didn't trust him at all and watched him too closely. His cronies would also jeer and jokingly say that he was henpecked. At times like this, he would feel very embarrassed. Later, I stopped going to find him. However, no matter when it was, after drinking, he would call me and ask me to pick him up and drive him home. I remembered that in the winter of the year before last, it was very cold. It was past 3 o'clock in the morning and I had already gone to bed. He called me and asked me to pick him up. When I went out, I found that it was snowing slightly. I had always been afraid of the cold, so I called him and asked him to leave the car in the parking lot and take a taxi back. On the phone, he ordered me, "Are you coming or not? If not, we break up." I went. On the way back, the snow was falling harder and harder. My hands holding the steering wheel were trembling. He was sleeping soundly in the back seat, snoring loudly. When I tremblingly drove the car back to the underground parking lot of the community and woke him up, I saw the annoyance in his eyes. "Najib, you have no right to say that I'm heartless," I said coldly. "When you were with me, you were thinking about Lily. You treated me with cold violence to show how much you loved her. When you were with her, you were thinking about me again. You don't understand love at all. What you want is just possession, to possess your first love Lily and possess my love." I ignored his anger and continued, "So, in the end, you have nothing. Wendy, I love you. I really love you." Najib seemed to use up all his strength in his life and shouted out his love for me. However, all my love for him had been completely worn away. "Take good care of your injuries and don't drink anymore. After all, no one will feel sorry for you anymore." I saw tears sliding down his face. I walked out without looking back. Epilogue. My best friend kept trying to match me with her cousin Forrester. I admit that Forrester and I really got along well. However, when it comes to feelings, it's better to take it slow. There's no rush. In the future, maybe Forrester and I will spark the flames of love, or maybe our feelings will grow gradually over time. Of course, it's also possible that we'll just appreciate each other and be friends. Anything is possible. The end.